Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be going through all the books that I read in April and then the books that I'm planning on reading in May. Hopefully I do good and I read them. These are just like hopefuls. I finally read the final Gambit after like so long not reading it. This was amazing. Like I cannot believe I was holding it off for that long. If you have not read, this is the third book in the Inheritance Games trilogy. It's the Inheritance Games, the Hawthorne Legacy, I think, and then the final Gambit. This was like everything and more. I was so happy with this. I don't know if I like the first one or this one better, but I think like those are my two favorites. The middle one was also really good though, so I just recommend reading the trilogy. I was in like a mystery mood because I had just finished the next book that I'm going to talk about, so I really wanted like another kind of mystery, and I was like, why don't I just read the final Gambit, because I'm like never in the mood to read this one since it came out. Like I've had it since I think it came out in September, and I was just so happy with it. It gave me like the joy that these books always give me, and it just made me feel so happy to be reading it. I love like mystery books that aren't too scary, but yeah, I love the final Gambit. I'll just say that. 5 out of 5 for me. Before that, I read Good Girl, Bad Blood. This was so good. I listened to the audiobook again like I did with the first one, and this was amazing. This is also a trilogy, I think. I've seen like other books by the author that kind of look similar, but I think they're separate from this trilogy. The next one I need to get. The next one is As Good as Dead, and I can't wait to read that one. This one was so good. After I read it though, I was like, I'm not gonna read the third one yet because I feel like I could take a bit of a breather and then read that one. That's kind of what has been working for me with these books. These ones are like bordering on scary for me. Like they could be scary, and sometimes I get slightly spooked, but they're not too scary and I still feel fine when I'm reading them, which is just perfect. But I would definitely say that these books are a little bit darker for sure than like the Inheritance Games books. If you don't know the premise of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, it's about this girl who is just a high school student, and she has this project that she's doing, and she decides to reopen or reinvestigate a murder case that wasn't fully solved, but everyone kind of just suspects that it was the boyfriend of the girl who died. The main character in the books, like, she doesn't believe that, so she goes and reinvestigates the case and looks into it herself. She gets really involved and goes like full in on it. There's romance in this book too. It's one of those stories where you're just like suspecting anyone. The ending was not something that I guessed either with the first one. The ending was also unexpected for me for this one. It's just so fast-paced. If you want to read like a light, fast-paced mystery book, then this is it. So I recently read By the Book. I didn't really know what to expect going into this. I've had like seen this book and heard about it before, but I didn't hear that much about it, so I kind of just went into it blindly. The girl in this book works in publishing, and she's just kind of like in a rut in her career. Her publishing company has a client who is writing a memoir, but he's taking a really long time, and it's just like impossible to contact him. She overhears her boss talking about wanting to get someone to actually go in person and help him like get him to write this book or like get something out of him, and she like randomly volunteers to do it just because she like wants to do something. So she goes to Santa Barbara, and he's like super kind of rude towards her, so it's definitely like an enemies to lovers type of thing. It's forced proximity. They're like forced to work together. She's trying to get him to like turn in something for the book, and he's like, well, why don't you just stay here and like help me write, or like help me like start writing it or something. I'm really happy I read this when it's going into summertime, because this is like a summer read for sure. One thing that they do a lot for their dates, or actually I guess it's not, they're not like going on dates, but they're just hanging out together, is surfing, and I just felt like there were like very beach summery vibes in this book. Both these characters just had things that they were like working through, and they definitely grew a lot together. Another book that I read is Violet Made of Thorns. This is a YA fantasy. I really liked this one. This is actually another enemies to lovers like fantasy romance type of book. It's one of those fantasies that has like a really big subplot of romance in it. The two characters in this have known each other since childhood. This little girl who's kind of like, I'm pretty sure she's homeless in the beginning of it. She gets a vision because she's like psychic, a prophet. She gets this vision of doom coming to this like little boy that she sees, so she like pushes him out of the way. Then the boy helps her because she doesn't really have a home or anything, and he actually ends up being the king's son, so the prince. He brings her back. She ends up being the king's prophet, and so the king just basically controls her like she's his puppet. So she is a prophet and can see things, but she lies a lot just because it's like she's doing a job. The king uses her like a political weapon. The prince sees this, and growing up he starts to really resent her because she's just like his father's puppet, and he feels like he can't really trust her. And so that's where you're starting off in the story. But then one day she gets a vision, and it's of the prince, because she had been told by the king to tell the prince that he's going to find love so that he would just hurry up and get married. But one day she's in vision of like something happening to the prince. And once that happens, like a series of events happens that involves her and the prince, and it changes everything. And obviously, because this is like a romance fantasy, you know, they do have a romance going on. The only thing about this one is that I wish it was more slow burn. It did feel, I don't know if it felt kind of slow burn, but I wish there was, it's kind of like they went straight enemies to lovers. I don't know, I almost wish like it was longer. Like I wish there was more happening between them, but there's probably another book that's gonna come out. Okay, now we're going into like the first bit of the month. Well, this one is just a reread of a book that I read a really long time ago. It came out in 2017. It's Reign of Shadows. I think I actually read this in 2017. I loved this book at the time and I still liked it now, but I didn't like it nearly as much. I think it's just because I've read more books since then, but I still think it was a pretty good book, and I just love the dark vibes of it, like apocalypse sort of thing that's going on. Basically the whole world is like in dark. I think there's like a little period of light. It's called like midlight or something. This is another one of those fantasy books where romance is really big in the subplot. It's a YA fantasy, so it was just like a little nostalgia trip for me. It was fun to read, and I started reading the second one. I think I actually got like maybe 30% through, and then I stopped reading it. I just kind of forgot about it. I don't know if I'll ever finish it, but this is just one of those books that I've thought of multiple times from 2017 to now. Next up, we're getting into books that I DNF'd. I started reading King of Battle and Blood, and then I DNF'd it. I was listening to the audiobook. I could not get wrapped up in this story. I think my favorite thing about it was the spice, and other than that, I just didn't really follow the story very well, and I didn't enjoy it. I just need more tension. I need more like burn of the romance. I felt like everything was happening too fast, and I just didn't believe it. Maybe it would have gotten better because I don't think I read that much of it. I don't know, yeah, it wasn't for me, but this is like a vampire adult fantasy. This one, a lot, okay, same with the last one too, but I just know like so many people love this book, so I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I DNF'd Icebreaker because I just knew I wasn't going to like it. Like I knew that I wasn't going to enjoy the rest of it like very much. Like it wasn't going to be like a book that I really liked. So I was like, why am I spending like more time reading it? There were definitely some parts that I liked in it for sure. I think I was like halfway through. I don't know, like I got pretty far I feel like, but it was still so much more left. Like it's kind of a longer romance book. I just made the executive decision to DNF it, and I feel really good about it, but a lot of people love it, so you know, just not my cup of tea. Okay, those are all the books that I read or started to read in April, and now let's move into my May TBR. So I'm currently reading The Stolen Heir. That's why I don't have the dust jacket on it. I'm using a pen, an orange pen, as my bookmark. I'm on page 37 and I'm loving it so far. So this is one that I'm starting in April and probably going to finish in May and read most of it in May. It's such a nice surprise when I open up a hardback like this and there's like a cool little like foil design on it. Another book that I want to read is a YA fantasy, This Vicious Grace. This just sounds really good to me. Did I forget what the plot is? Yeah, but I remember that it sounds really good. Her gift from the gods is supposed to magnify a partner's magic, but instead it kills every suitor that she touches. She needs a partner to stop the invasion of these like zombie things. I'm basically summarizing this. I just have a feeling about this one that I'm gonna really like it, and usually when I have a feeling about books like this, I do end up really liking them. So hopefully I'm right and I end up loving it. Oh, another one that I'm actually kind of reading right now, I'm listening to the audiobook. Before I filmed this, I was listening to this audiobook, and it's Kingsbane, the second book of the Furyborn trilogy. It's been like 2-ish months, I think, since I've read the Furyborn book, and it took me a little bit to get into the beginning of this audiobook because I needed to like get back in the headspace of this world, but now I'm like in it and I want to keep listening to it, and that just feels so good when I get to that point. But it's also really long. It's like 20 hours of an audiobook. After the ones that I've been reading, that just sounds insanely long, but I'm ready for it. I feel like it goes by a lot faster when you're listening to a book. They always go by so fast when I'm like really into them, and I just know that these books are good, so I know that I'm gonna get sucked in. I forgot to talk about a book that I read in April. I read Winter in Paradise, which I loved so much. I was pleasantly surprised. Like I've never read a book quite like this one, and I loved it. Think for vibes, Big Little Lies mixed with The Other Women, beachy summer read, a bunch of POVs of characters who are pretty different from each other, but like there's like one group where they know each other and then another group where they know each other, and they all come together eventually in the Caribbean where some of them already lived because of this incident that happens that affects both like sides of the people. And then like romances happen. This woman discovers that her husband has this whole like secret life. It's also a trilogy. I think the other ones are What Happens in Paradise and Trouble in Paradise. Another book that I want to read is Sewing. This is a fantasy book, and I actually don't really know anything about this, but the author sent it to me and she burnt the pages like this, and I thought it was really cool. Next up, I want to read some more mystery books that aren't too intense. One of them I just have as a placeholder. I put in A Good Girl Guide to Murder so I wouldn't forget that I want to read As Good as Dead, which is the 3rd book. I know Holly Jackson knows how to write a good mystery, so I am excited and I'm looking forward to it. I am going to listen to the audiobook of Truly Devious because for some reason I can't get myself to physically read this, but I actually have it ready to listen to, so I'm going to listen to this one soon. I feel like once I get into this one, I'm going to be sucked into it, and I'm just excited for that to happen. This is another mystery book that's YA, so it's not going to be too scary, and it's just perfect. Exactly what I was looking for. I think this has like dark academia vibes. I don't know why I start reading these books more often in the summer. That always happens. Like, it's supposed to be fantasy in the fall. When I think about it, it's like, okay, fantasy, dark academia in the fall, and then summer romances in the summer, but it doesn't always end up happening like that. Like, a lot of times I'll just randomly get in the mood to read dark academia, but lately I've been just kind of in the mood to read anything. I've been on a roll. It feels good. Another book I really want to read is The Secret History. Oh my god, the text is so tiny. This one I feel like I'm really gonna have to get myself to read because I've just been putting this one off for such a long time, but it's got that mystery feel that I want, although I hope it's not actually scary. This one I'm like not sure if it's actually scary, so we'll see. Compelling, elegant, dramatic, and playful. Psychological thriller. Chilling. And those are all the books that I have on my May TBR. I feel like this is actually a pretty realistic TBR for me. It's not too many books. I always like have a habit of putting a bunch of them on there. So that is the end of the video. I also talk about books on my Goodreads, Instagram, and TikTok. If you want to check out those, they'll be in the description. Make sure to like this video and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and I will see you in the next one.